The alien vessel, Rellikon-class surveillance cruiser Vestal, hung motionless in low Earth orbit, cloaked and silent. Inside, the observation chamber buzzed softly with recalibrations as Research Officer Helvix adjusted the spectral overlays on the central monitor. His ocular ridges twitched with confusion. Subject Omega-34 has consumed over 7,000 kilocalories in the last 6 hours. Helvix muttered, his three-fingered hand darting across the control panel. Fatty acids, complex carbohydrates, refined sugars, sodium compounds. This is not sustenance. This is self-destruction. A faint blue hologram of the human hovered above the console. The man, tall with an athletic build, was shown consuming an alarming array of food: pasta, bagels, energy drinks, and an entire tray of what Helvix had learned were called cinnamon rolls. Begin physiological stress analysis, Helvix instructed. The scan results appeared with a 3-note chime. Elevated blood glucose, dilated blood vessels, mild dehydration, no signs of organ failure. Impossible, Helvix said aloud. The subject was currently seated on a park bench in Denver, Colorado, chewing through a sandwich roughly the size of a newborn Vexian larva. He occasionally checked a wrist device and made notes on a printed sheet labeled Marathon Prep Log. Helvix activated the linguistics module and sent a direct audio feed to the ship's archive logs. The human was speaking. Carb loading. Gotta fuel the tank, the man said, mostly to himself. Helvix froze. He tapped the ship's AI. Define carb loading, he commanded. The AI responded monotonously. Term used by humans. Short for carbohydrate loading. Strategy employed by endurance athletes to maximize glycogen storage prior to long events. Common in preparation for marathons. Helvix retracted slightly. He is not engaging in self-harm. He is preparing, the AI confirmed. Helvix stared at the monitor, then zoomed in on the man's identification badge. Orren Easton. Down on Earth, Orren wiped mustard from his chin and stretched his legs. His race bib was already attached to a bright orange shirt that read Mile High Madness Marathon. His girlfriend, Tessa Langdon, stood nearby with a paper cup of coffee in each hand. You've eaten like a bear preparing for hibernation, she said, handing him one. Orren grinned. This isn't overeating. This is strategy. Tessa took a sip. You're going to regret saying that when you hit mile 18. I'll coast through it. I've got a plan. Back aboard the Vestal, Helvix initiated an emergency alert to the Rellikon Health Tribunal. A direct violation of known interstellar dietary safety thresholds had been observed. Protocol dictated immediate containment and, if warranted, extraction. Prepare containment unit, Helvix instructed the crew. Subject Omega-34 is exhibiting Category 4 nutritional recklessness. The tribunal responded within minutes. Proceed with capture for further analysis. Do not allow subject to complete this marathon. His internal systems may destabilize. Helvix hesitated. He shows no signs of failure. His species may tolerate more than we believed. Do not risk contamination of galactic health doctrine. Capture confirmed. Helvix sighed. Understood. The next morning, the Denver streets were packed with runners. Music blared. Volunteers handed out water bottles and motivational high fives. Orren jogged in place near the starting line, a banana in one hand and a waffle in the other. Tessa waved from the sidelines. Remember, pace yourself. I'm carb primed, babe, he shouted back. Helvix watched from the stealth pod descending toward the city. The pod, shaped like an ornamental hot air balloon to avoid suspicion, hovered just above the rooftops. He locked onto Orren's signal. Target acquired, he said. At the 5-mile marker, Orren was running strong. His breathing was steady, his strides consistent. Helvix moved closer. Activating the neural dampener meant to render the subject unconscious for safe extraction. But just as the beam powered up, a child darted into the road to retrieve a dropped toy. Orren spotted him instantly and veered off course, grabbing the boy and tumbling onto the grass. Spectators screamed. Tessa pushed through the crowd. Is he okay? Orren sat up slowly, holding his side. Kid's fine, he said through gritted teeth. Think I landed on a sprinkler head. Tessa helped the boy to his feet. Helvix cursed. The beam had missed. Worse, the fall had injured the subject. Orren stood, tried to put weight on his right leg, and winced. Something's off. Tessa ran her hand down his shin. You might have fractured something. Sit down. Medical personnel arrived with a gurney. Orren protested, but he couldn't walk. They loaded him up and wheeled him to the on-site medical tent. Inside, a portable imaging device confirmed a non-displaced fibular fracture. You're lucky it's minor, the medic said. But you're out for 6 to 8 weeks. No marathon today. Orren exhaled. All that carb loading for nothing. Tessa sat beside him, holding his hand. You saved a kid. I'd call that a win. Helvix hovered above the tent, analyzing the scan. Bone fracture. Moderate tissue bruising. No internal bleeding. Recovery time estimated at 43 Earth days. He canceled the extraction. The subject has removed himself from the event. No further risk of extreme caloric conversion. Stand down. Back aboard the Vestal, Helvix submitted a full report to the tribunal. Subject Omega-34 was not engaging in suicidal consumption. He was preparing for a ritualistic endurance trial known as a marathon, which appears to be culturally sanctioned. Caloric intake was strategic, not reckless. The tribunal responded with skepticism. Explain the cinnamon rolls. Helvix paused. Flavor enhancement. Motivational component. Monitor further. Weeks passed. Orren wore a walking boot and attended physical therapy. He watched another race from the sidelines, cheering as Tessa crossed the finish line. I miss running, he said quietly. You'll be back soon. Next time I'm going to carb load smarter. Less sugar. Tessa nudged him. You say that every time. Helvix noted the exchange. The subject was adjusting behavior based on experience. Adaptation. Rational thinking. He logged an update. Human dietary strategies, while appearing excessive, serve practical functions within their culture. Further study required. Recommend long-term observation. Helvix leaned back in his chair, watching the monitor as Orren limped toward the snack table and grabbed 2 bagels. Still learning, Helvix muttered. And for once, he didn't file a complaint. 48 days after the Denver incident, Orren Easton stood barefoot on the cool linoleum of the physical therapy clinic, wobbling on a foam balance disc while tossing a weighted ball against the wall. Sweat darkened the collar of his faded T-shirt. The boot was gone. In its place were elastic resistance bands, ankle circles, and cautious optimism. Your gait's still compensating, said Dr. Liam Partridge, scribbling notes on her tablet. You're favoring the lateral side. Again. I'm not limping, Orren said, catching the ball. You're not limping. You're clinging to stability like a cat on a wet countertop. Different thing. I missed you too. Keep throwing. Don't talk. He launched the ball harder. It bounced back with a satisfying thud. Outside, Denver simmered under a late summer haze. The next citywide race was 2 weeks away. Tessa was already registered. Orren hadn't decided. Up above, in geosynchronous orbit, the Vestal had not left. Helvix stood before a new holographic projection of Earth's surface, now tracking over 100 human subjects across 5 continents. The tribunal had expanded the directive. Long-term behavioral profiling. No more single-subject anomalies. They wanted patterns. Helvix hadn't argued. He had, however, kept Orren tagged as a Category A, adaptive outlier. He still didn't understand humans' willingness to endure voluntary pain for ephemeral goals. Yet the data was undeniable. They got hurt, healed, adjusted, then did it again, often with more enthusiasm. Initiate field probe, Helvix said. Deploy via weather satellite channel. Target. Subject Omega-34. The probe, disguised as a barometric sensor, descended silently, embedding itself into a local weather station atop the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. From there, it began capturing biometric fluctuations and local audio. Orren's voice came through faintly. All I'm saying is, if I can manage 5 miles without limping, I should be allowed to jog the first half. You're allowed to try, Tessa said, voice sharp over the background hum of a smoothie blender. You're not allowed to ignore your PT and destroy your peroneus again. I didn't destroy it. It's healing. Because you've been following orders. Don't go rogue now. The probe logged the exchange. Helvix frowned. The female had assumed a supervisory role. This deviated from Rellikon recovery norms, where injured individuals were isolated for biochemical recalibration. Here, the communal dynamic was integral to recovery. Curious, he muttered. They heal in packs. Back on Earth, Orren stretched his calf against the curb outside the cafe. His phone buzzed. A local running group had posted a call for volunteers for a trail clean-up event. He tilted his head. Want to hike Bear Creek this weekend? He asked. Tessa looked up from her cup. You're not cleared for elevation gain. I'll bring trekking poles. You hate trekking poles. I hate not moving more. She sighed. Fine. But I'm carrying the first aid kit. 2 days later, they stood at the trailhead, surrounded by weekend hikers, college students with trash bags, and a wiry man wearing a headlamp even though it was noon. Orren adjusted his brace and tied a red bandana around his neck. No running today. Just hiking. Slowly, they moved up the trail, stopping to remove plastic bottles, lost wrappers, and an entire abandoned lawn chair. Orren knelt to untangle fishing line caught in a bush. You okay? Tessa called from 10 feet up. Yeah, just hang on. He pulled a tightly wound knot free, revealing a small injured bird caught in the mess. Its wing twitched. Oh no. She crouched beside him. It's a broad-tailed hummingbird. You can't just leave it here. I wasn't planning to throw it in the recycling. I mean, we have to take it somewhere. The bird trembled in his palm, weightless and frantic. Helvix, watching through the probe's thermal relay, zoomed in on the encounter. The human had paused a recreational activity to assist a damaged life form of no strategic value. No kinship, no utility. Yet the concern was genuine. He activated the AI. Cross-reference with known motivations for interspecies rescue behavior. List precedents. The AI responded after several seconds. Documented motives include empathy, symbolic association, and perceived moral obligation. In humans, subcortical reward centers activate during acts of altruism, even when no reciprocal benefit is expected. Helvix leaned closer to the projection. So they help without reason. The AI offered no further clarification. Back on the trail, Tessa tucked the bird into a makeshift sling made from her sleeve and secured it under her vest. There's a wildlife rehab center 20 minutes from here. If we hustle, we can get it there before it goes into shock. Orren nodded. Let's go. They returned to the car, bypassing the rest of the cleanup. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by the bird's faint movements. Orren focused on the road. Tessa held her breath every time it fluttered. At the center, a volunteer in scrubs met them at the door, took the bundle gently, and vanished behind a curtain. 5 minutes later, she returned with a clipboard. It's dehydrated, wings fractured, but no internal trauma. With rest and fluids, it should recover. Tessa exhaled. Orren signed the intake form. Can we get updates? Sure. You want to name it? He blinked. Seriously. Helps with tracking. You can pick anything. He hesitated. Eddie. Tessa looked sideways at him. Eddie. Short for edamame. I was hungry when I found it. The volunteer laughed and scribbled it down. Eddie it is. Later that night, Orren sat on the porch with a cold pack on his ankle and a beer in his hand. Tessa emerged with their mail and tossed a padded envelope into his lap. What's this? From the running club. You didn't tell me you signed up again. He opened it. Inside was a new race bib and a band with the number 77. The local 10-kilometer trail run. No pavement. All elevation. You're not ready, Tessa said. I'm not racing. I'm pacing. She raised an eyebrow. I volunteered to be a guide for the back group. The ones who just want to finish. Helvix recorded the update. Subject Omega-34 has altered his role within the event structure. No longer competing. Now facilitating others. The AI chimed. Behavior consistent with mentorship transition model. Helvix narrowed his eyes. They shift purpose to remain in motion. On race day, 2 weeks later, Orren stood with half a dozen runners at the base of a wooded incline. Some were older, some visibly nervous. One was recovering from a recent illness and wore a heart monitor. Orren wore his brace, his bandana, and a hydration pack. His energy was calm, steady. Let's stick together, he said. This isn't about speed. It's about staying upright and crossing the line. The group nodded. They moved slowly up switchbacks lined with pine. They passed no one. The faster runners had vanished ahead, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the crunch of gravel. At mile 4, one woman twisted her foot. Orren helped her sit, wrapped the ankle with an elastic bandage, and signaled the sweep team. He waited with her until they arrived. At mile 5, the oldest runner in the group stopped to catch his breath. Orren handed him a glucose tab. "You good?" The man nodded, eyes focused downward. "Let's walk it in." No shame in that. Together, they crossed the finish line 70 minutes after the first wave. Applause met them anyway. Helvix watched from the ship, silent. "Subject Omega-34 is not exceptional in strength nor efficiency," he said. The AI responded, "Correct. He is exceptional in continuity." The AI blinked. "Please define parameters." Helvix didn't answer. He was already opening a new case file. "Human resilience," he wrote. "Not a matter of biology. A matter of insistence." Orren's chest heaved as he brought the shovel down again. A puff of dry soil lifted into the air before settling on the toe of his boot. The sun sat low behind the foothills, casting slanted gold across the community garden plot where he and Tessa were planting a row of late-season squash. A fine layer of sweat clung to his forearms. His brace, now retired, lay folded in the back seat of the car. "You're digging like the ground owes you money," Tessa said, crouching beside a tray of seedlings. "That root not insult you or something?" "I'm testing the leg," he answered. "Uneven terrain. Resistance. Seems fine. You said that last week, and then you limped for 2 days. That was a misstep. Literally." She raised an eyebrow. "Okay, maybe my foot wasn't ready for trail sprints. But this is different. You're the only person I know who thinks shoveling counts as diagnostics. It's functional. It's cross-training." She pressed a seedling into the dirt. "It's squash." Helvix watched through a micro-drone woven into a common bee. The insect hovered unnoticed between lavender stalks as it recorded the human subjects engaged in agricultural labor. This activity had not been previously noted in Omega-34's behavior patterns, and yet here he was, voluntarily exerting himself again, this time to cultivate a food source he could easily purchase. "Unnecessary effort," Helvix muttered. "Why replicate industrial outputs by hand?" The AI replied, "Human motivations for manual cultivation include psychological satisfaction, environmental values, and perceived taste enhancement." Helvix narrowed his eyes. "They believe it tastes better if they suffer for it." "Correct." At the far corner of the garden, an elderly man waved at Orren. "You're Orren, right? You're the one who helped Carl finish that trail run last month." Orren wiped his forehead. "Yeah, that was me. He said you stuck with him the whole way, even when he couldn't breathe right. He was determined. Just needed someone to pace him. I've got a group training for the turkey trot next month. You ever do that one?" "Not yet." "Well, we meet Tuesdays, 7 p.m. You're welcome to join us." Tessa waited until the man walked off before leaning in. "You're not actually considering adding another race?" "I'm just joining a training run." "That's not a commitment. You say that like you don't have a drawer full of race bibs." "I won't push it. I can jog a few miles without consequence now. You pushed it last time. I've learned." She didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a watering can. By evening, they were back in the kitchen. Orren moved with a slight stiffness, but no limp. He chopped bell peppers while Tessa stirred something thick and tomato-based on the stove. "Can I ask you something?" she said without looking up. "Sure. Why do you keep signing up for things you know might put you back on the injury list?" He paused. "Because if I don't sign up, I won't get better. You're not in surgery anymore. You're healed. Healed is different than whole." She turned down the burner. "You're not trying to prove something, are you?" "No. I just don't want to be afraid of my own joints." "You could just not run. There are other things." "That's not it. It's not about running. It's about not letting fear pick my limits." Helvix recorded the dialogue. Subject displays post-recovery psychological recalibration. Not merely physical restoration, cognitive defiance of prior constraints. He began compiling a case study, Adaptive Persistence in Human Recovery Cycles. 48 hours later, Orren laced up his shoes beside an empty high school track. It was overcast, the kind of day where the air felt like a wet wool blanket. Tessa sat on the bleachers, reading a book but glancing up every few minutes. He jogged one cautious lap, then another. No pain. He accelerated slightly. Still nothing. By the sixth lap, he was moving with steady rhythm, no visible compensation. His form relaxed, arms swinging loose at his sides. Tessa didn't look up this time. She could hear his footsteps even, consistent, untroubled. Helvix observed silently. The subject had returned to baseline performance. But this was not the anomaly. The anomaly was how many failures had been required to reach it. The AI chimed. "Would you like to close the omega-34 file?" "No," Helvix said. "I want to finalize it." 3 days later, the turkey trot training group met under a flickering street lamp in a suburban park. Most wore reflective vests or headlamps. Orren wore neither. He stood under a tree, stretching his hamstrings, nodding as the group's organizer gave route instructions. They ran 3 miles. Orren stayed mid-pack, chatting with a teenager trying to improve her mile pace. She mentioned a goal of beating her older brother's time. Orren offered pacing tips, breath control techniques, and a few jokes that made her laugh despite herself. At the finish, the group applauded each other. Orren high-fived the teenager and thanked the organizer, then walked back to his car without the slightest hitch in his stride. When he got home, Tessa was assembling a shelf in the living room. "You smell like asphalt," she said without looking up. "I smell like progress." "You overdo it?" "Nope. Talked most of the way. Even pace." She tapped in a screw. "So, you good now?" "I think I am," he said. "I don't feel like I'm chasing something anymore." Helvix made the final notation. Subject omega-34. Recovery complete. No longer exhibiting signs of compulsive risk behavior. Displays recalibrated physical thresholds and rational activity selection. Psychological state, stable. Motivation, self-defined stability, not external validation. The AI blinked. "Shall I archive the file?" "Yes," Helvix said. "And mark outcome as anomalously successful." Unusual. Unusually human. The drone bee departed from the garden the next morning, drifting upward past low clouds before disintegrating in the upper atmosphere. No trace. No pursuit. Orren never noticed. A week later, he and Tessa sat at a small table outside a bakery. She had a croissant. He had black coffee and a scone the size of a small brick. "This isn't carb loading, is it?" she asked. "Nope," he said. "It's just breakfast." She took a bite of her croissant and smiled. Good. They didn't talk about races. They didn't talk about recovery. They just sat in the morning light, sipping slowly, letting things be. And for the first time in months, Orren didn't feel like he was in motion. He felt at rest.